But despite all this opposition, the common people of Tibet welcomed this ice-melting moment. After the flight of the Dalai Lama and his clique, the PLA pacified the Lhasa revolt in less than 3 days. Premier Zhou Enlai issued an announcement in the name of the State Council that as of March 28, 1959, Gasag, the Tibetan local government, was dissolved. Thereafter, the feudal serfdom regime collapsed. Following 8 years of expectation, the Tibetan people overflowed into the streets, hailing the successes of the pacification of the revolt and the rebirth of Tibet. At that moment, 5 members of Serf Dumba's family, who had belonged to different owners, could celebrate a reunion. At that moment, the Yanka family, who had been beggars, were provided with a real house by the government and moved out of their shanty. At that moment, the serfs at the Gangdan monastery burned the title deed of the fleeing nobles. This footage records that unforgettable moment. A great joy followed. The serfs were granted land certificates of their own, something that would have been inconceivable in the past. The lands of the fleeing nobles was given to the serfs. They pegged out their ownership of the land and also their newfound rights. The farming tools and livestock also had new owners. In the democratic reform, some former serfs became leaders, but because of their lack of knowledge, they made some silly mistakes.
那时候知道男女，不知道公母。统计牲口的时候呢，女马多少，男马多少。有时候呢，像你这样多少，像我这样多少。我们工作组长是个男的嘛，我们是女的嘛，是公的就是像你这样，母的叫像我这样。
In September 1961, the first democratic elections held in Tibet. No sooner had they been granted their freedom than the serfs learned to exercise their political rights. The election process was simple, but it was highly effective, as there was no possibility of cheating.
虽然那个时候我们的选举非常设施非常简陋，用豌豆，用一些背对背的这种方式来今天看来非常简单，但是在那个时候来讲，是真正的行使一个权利，使人感觉到我自己是我自己的主人。
The first government of the Tibet Autonomous Region was established on September 1st, 1965. Consequently, many former serfs became leaders. They were the masters of New Tibet. The democratic revolution in Tibet was a historic advance and undoubtedly a movement for human rights. More than 1 million serfs and slaves were liberated, which marked it as a great affair in the world history of the human rights movement. The Tibetan people welcomed the spring of reform and opening up in the new era. Their minds are more open, and they are now firmly on track to becoming rich through hard work. China is opening up and developing fast, and Tibet is not being left behind. Supported by other parts of China, Tibet is also on the fast track to modernization. In the new era, with the care and help of the central government, the Tibetan people have worked out a new method to develop Tibet, based on the concept of scientific development. Hundreds of years ago, European countries were able to rid themselves of the political and religious rule by the Holy See, and humans were liberated and society became advanced. Following their democratic revolution, the fate of the Tibetan people has also been transformed. A photograph of Tibetan students in Beijing shows Mao Tsetung with many of his Tibetan friends. They'd all been classmates at Lhasa Middle School. In those days, outstanding youngsters were chosen to study in other parts of China. Mao Tsetung went to one of China's most famous universities, Tsinghua.
在学校的班里头呢，各科目的老师对我是特别的开小灶。同学们呢都是汉族，他们是几个人来帮我一门课。我进校的时候，这个标语我一辈子忘不了：健康的为祖国工作50年。
Following his graduation, this slogan would always encourage Mao Tsetung to work hard in the various positions he occupied. By the time of his retirement, he was director of the Contemporary Research Institute at the Tibet Academy of Social Sciences. Yushe Yangzom studied at the Beijing Medical University and then went back to Tibet as a doctor of gynecology and pediatrics. Over the past 4 decades, she's witnessed the development and growth of medical and health services in Tibet.
是到村里头也有那个村医，他监管很多项目，不是说是光看一个病，他把那个预防、治疗，还有那个康复这些他都全部都要包揽一切。这样的时候，他就等于是每个乡、每个村有人管了。这么有人管的话呢，一旦发现哪个地方有这个疫情， 那肯定的，在第一时间尽量的把它治疗。
Dr. Yushe has a beautiful granddaughter. For the little girl, her childhood won't be the same miserable experience as that endured by her grandmother. Suwang Jume studied at Beijing Normal University. There, he fell in love with a local Beijing girl, Zhang Tingfang, who agreed to marry him.
但是确实当时这个爱情的力量太大了，我觉得我应该跟他一起，所以呢，权衡了这个各方面的情况呢，我感到我应该为这个爱做出这个牺牲，应该和他一块儿到西藏去。
Living in Tibet, the couple have devoted their lives to the cause of education. Suwang Jume went on to become the first president of Tibet University. Today, it is a modern, comprehensive university. For decades, it's been the couple's habit to walk across the campus, hand in hand. Though old now, Pasang is still in the habit of reading every day. In the course of several decades, she's made several achievements thanks to her diligence. Once, she climbed up to the top of Tiananmen Gate to deliver a speech on behalf of hundreds of thousands of serfs who had been free men. From serf to master, her experience is legendary.